I'm Dean. I'm the dad.
I'm Laura. I'm the mom.
And I'm Krysta, and I'm the daughter.
And together we are
Family
Plot. Well, thank you guys. That was nice of you. Well, here we are again with my lady and my daughter to talk all things neat and cool and historical and folkloric and paranormal and true crimey. That's what we do here.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. So, a few things before we get started. One, if you want to help us out, you can join our Patreon page. Donations are $1, $3, $5, and $10. You can join Team Bunny, Team Electric Bill, or Team Podcast. Doesn't really matter. All goes to the same place, really. Pay the electric bill and feed the bunny. Jeez, she's getting big.
Yeah, she eats a lot.
Also, if you can't do a monthly donation, hey, we don't judge. You can do a one-time donation, any whole dollar amount, through Buy Me a Coffee. And if you can't do that, that's okay too. What you can do is, if you enjoy the show, share it on social media. If you don't,
keep it to yourself.
Sorry.
That's okay, Krysta.
We can't be on time. At cute cats.
We can't be on time every time.
Well, we could if maybe she wasn't looking at cute cats.
So today we set our borrowed Wayback Machine to August 28th, 1826. And we visit a place called Crawford Notch, which sounds vaguely suggestive and not in a good way.
Well, depends on what you're looking for.
Crawford Notch, New Hampshire. To investigate the death of a family in a rare tragedy that history remembers as the Willey Family tragedy, in today's fan-suggested, devastating historical episode of the Family Plot podcast. But first,
it's that time again.
Yep.
It's not just any corner, it's Krysta's corner.
There's our Krysta. Yay, Krysta!
It's time for Krysta's corner.
It is time for Krysta's corner.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my corner. It's another Wednesday for me. It's going to be another Thursday for you.
It's podcast day is what it is.
It's podcast day.
Always the best.
And my main objective today has been drinking a lot of water and downloading images of adorable cats off of Pinterest.
I love it. Okay, so tell everybody about your app, because you know what? Okay, so I'm going to say your dad giving you a hard time about it. But what I have to say is I know a lot of people who struggle to drink their water. So drinking water is one of the easiest things that you can do to improve your health, improve your well-being, improve all kinds of things. Our bodies are primarily made of water, and a ton of people don't drink enough water.
They don't.
So I was really excited when you shared with me, and your dad kind of gave you a hard time about it. And I think your sibling is doing it as well, right? They're using the same app? Okay. So
he introduced me to it.
That is so fun. So tell us about the app that you are using I mean, I can't imagine why the app owner wouldn't want you to put out a little promo for it. We are not sponsored by
We're
them.
not sponsored by this app,
But
however. This app is called Plant Nanny. If you have not heard of it, it is on the App Store.
And just because you might not have heard her say it, she said a little quickly, the name of the app is Plant Nanny.
as in you are being the nanny for the plant. Yes, Dad, that's correct.
PLANTNANNY. That is how you spell it if you did not previously know how to spell it. Because I know probably some younger people listen to us as well that may also struggle with drinking their water.
Well, there you go.
Plant, like Audrey 2, Nanny, like Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
But this is an app where there are 3 different open choices of a plant. If you just want the free options, you get to choose a plant, and then you tell it what your weight is, and it gives you a goal of how many cups of water you want to drink. Now, depending on your glass, you need to change it, but that's also in settings. So, let's say you have a bigger glass, you could get more water in, and then you have to finish the goal that day, and the plant grows when you give it more water. Now, it does take a little bit because you have to drink all of your water for the day, I'm pretty sure, but yeah, it's a really nice way to make sure
encourage you. Yeah.
It's a cute little plant.
Right. And then you were just showing me another app that you're using that's really a self-care app.
Yeah.
And what is that one? Because I think that it's really important for you to share things that you're doing for your good mental health.
Because
we know that you've struggled with...
I do struggle with a lot of my mental health, and I do struggle with doing a lot of different stuff, such as taking a shower, brushing my teeth, cleaning my room. Therefore, even right now, because I'm going through a really tough time right now, seeing as I just had some stuff happen the other day. Not gonna go too much in debt, or not in debt, but like in
too
depth.
much in depth into that.
But I did break up with someone yesterday. This app is called Finch. You have this little tiny penguin that you get to choose stuff to do that is easy for you to do that day, and once you're done with the goals, you press the buttons on the game to tell the Finch that you finished those goals, and it gives you like a congratulation things. There's also affirmations, and it asks you how you're feeling, and it's a really good way to
do like a personal like self check-in and looking at your own well-being, your self-care, mental health, all that. I love it. I'm very proud of you for finding those tools, Krysta. That's really hard. That's really a good thing. So I just wanted to, give you encouragement, because I think it's great that you're trying to do things that are good for you as a person.
I had pears this morning. I wasn't expecting to do that today.
That was a good choice, though.
Yeah, it is. It is much better than junk food or chips or sugar. So, absolutely, I'm very proud of you.
Pears are really good, though. My personal opinion.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to share today?
Not really. I've done my talking, I feel.
Okay, here we go. More claps for Krysta. Alrighty. So it's time to get into this week's story. So to start with, let's learn a little bit about Vermont before we get into the more tragic elements of the story.
Can I stop you there for just a minute? Because didn't you say that we were talking about New Hampshire?
I did. So why are we learning about Vermont? Because Crawford Notch is actually in Vermont, not New Hampshire. So I didn't catch that.
Wow. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I was a little confused. I'm like, wait, we're talking about going to New Hampshire, so why are we talking about Vermont? Okay, all right, that clears that.
Back in the day, New Hampshire was Vermont. No.
I mean, I think they were both like the part of the 13 original colonies, weren't they? So probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right.
So let's learn a little bit about Vermont before we get, into the more tragic elements of the story.
Absolutely.
Originally dubbed the Vermont Republic, it was founded by the French before the British managed to bounce them out of the country. Now, Vermont abolished slavery before any other state and became a stronghold of the abolitionist movement during the 1800s. Now the state is split by the Green Mountains, which separate Lake Champlain Valley on the west from the Connecticut River Valley on the east of the state. Mm-hmm. In fact, Vermont's first militia was dubbed the Green Mountain Boys. The state is known for its progressivism these days. Vermont was the first state to recognize same-sex civil unions and marriages, the first state to approve recreational marijuana, the most renewable electricity at 99.9%, and the least religious state. So here's the news, guys. We're moving to Vermont.
No, we're not. No, we are not.
Now, the state was at one point a bastion of the foresting industry, and what land remains is dedicated to agriculture.
Alrighty. Wow, that's a lot for such a teeny tiny state. Isn't Vermont pretty small?
It's not as small as Rhode Island, but yes, it's not a large state.
Yeah. And they have a lot of skiing and stuff there, too, right?
According to the Bob Newhart show, sure.
Well, I mean, yeah, and isn't that where they were going in Holiday, not Holiday, in Christmas.
White Christmas. Yeah. They were going to Vermont.
Yeah, they were. They were going to Vermont.
And it makes sense. Because of the Green Mountains, they would have a lot of snow.
Sure.
In fact, the place is characterized by warm, wet summers and cold, wet winters.
Wow.
I think I've heard that before, like in a science class.
Probably. So, let's talk about the area where the unfortunate events took place. So, Crawford Notch was originally called White Mountain Notch. It became known to European settlers when it was discovered by Tim Nash in 1771. It was eventually named for the Crawford family, a family of trailblazers and hoteliers who settled in the region. This was in the early 1800s, so it had not been Crawford's Notch for very long when the Willey family, or is it Willey? Willey family tragedy occurred. In a bit of foreshadowing, it should be noted that during powerful storms, rock slides were pretty common in the area.
Yeah, it's Willey, because if they had been a Willey family, they probably wouldn't have, gotten in a tragedy.
Well, that's one way of looking at it.
So let's meet the Willey family. Samuel Willey Jr., along with his wife, 5 children, and 2 hired hands, moved to what was then known as the Crawford House, an inn on the mostly abandoned White Mountain Road. Now, it's also near a turnpike that went through the White Mountain Notch. They'd done that back in 1809. So Samuel Willey set about expanding the home to resume its career as an inn for mountain travelers. Aware that the area was a potential place for rock slides, this part is not true, I found out. They did not build a stone shelter. There was one. Behind the house was a sort of a depression into the mountain, above which was a stone ridge. Mm-hmm. So they made it a point to go there whenever the weather got bad enough and they were worried. that becomes important later.
Right.
Anyway, now because the fact is, I guess I'm done. I started into the next thing.
All right. So they had some place that they would hole up when the weather got bad.
Right. So yeah, they arrived in 1825. So while they made some improvements, they were no means finished.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, it takes a while because unfortunately the issue that we're talking about took place just the following summer after they arrived in
August, which I hate August.
Yeah,
mostly because here in Kansas City, August is a month you literally burn into your shoes.
Yeah, you melt. But we're kind of at a point where nothing's going to happen until August in our story. Maybe we should take a moment and...
For a word from our sponsors?
Yeah.
I was going to suggest that very thing.
It's amazing how in sync we are sometimes, huh?
Yep. It's amazing that we have 2 kids together and then we share other kids.
That's right. Hey, honey.
Yes, dear.
I feel sponsored.
Yay. Hey, Krysta. How do you feel?
Sponsored.
Yay.
Awesome.
This episode brought to you by the Independent Super 8, a Wyndham property. There you go. All right.
So the only way that is an actual thing is if your boss starts paying you for mentioning your full-time or your part-time employer when we're recording. I don't think that's going to happen.
You're probably right. He won't even pay to fix things right. Let's be honest.
Hey! Don't be throwing your boss under the bus when we're having our podcast.
Yeah, fair enough.
Throwing your boss under the bus. What if they find
I'm going to throw you under the bus, Krysta.
Nuh-uh, we love our Krysta.
You can throw me under the bus. I just don't think no one will call the police. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
Alrighty, so let's talk about the events and, the natural events that led up to the tragedy that we're discussing.
Right.
Disgusting. It was disgusting and it was a tragedy, but to correct my English, the tragedy that we are discussing today. So, northern New England, the area where the Willey family had moved, experienced a drought in the summer of 1826, right around a year after the family had arrived in the area. At the end of that drought, there was a terrific storm on the evening of August 28th. Because of the fact that the soil was dried out, it was simply unable to absorb the rain as quickly as it was coming. And so, flooding followed. And with the valley at Crawford Notch being one place that suffered the consequences, all but 2 of the bridges on the turnpike that ran through the notch were destroyed. Trees suffered a similar fate, and the high sides of the valley were gouged by swollen streams and landslides. Altogether, the weather was simply a bad scene in the making.
Right. And whereas today, it wouldn't have turned out quite that way. But remember, we're talking 1826.
Right.
So in the habit of the time, And let's remember, there was no FEMA or other similar organization at the time. So the aftermath of disasters were investigated by the community, which basically meant if your neighbor was Joe and his house was pretty much okay, he would start walking down the block and checking on everybody and making sure everybody was okay, and nobody needed the police or medical professionals such as they were in 1826.
Well, yeah, and Joe was a good guy, so he'd hook you up like that.
So, I'm just saying, we're depending on our neighbors here.
Yeah.
So, neighbors came to check on the Willeys. What they found was the land around the house was churned up. The stable had been smashed by the landslide, and many of the Willeys' animals were killed. The land was churned up on either side of the home, as the ridge just above the house, which is where that stone overhang was, had caused the landslide to split. And the landslide had passed on either side of the home, leaving it completely untouched. Folks like Ethan Crawford, one of the above-named Crawfords, and Samuel Willey's brother, the Reverend Willey, which... man, every time I wrote that name, I giggled.
Reverend Willey.
Came to visit the house, which miraculously stood untouched. Beds were unmade, clothes were strewn about, there was ash in the fireplace, there was a Bible on the table, which was open, and all of that attested to the family's quick departure.
Right.
As more and more people came to investigate the aftermath, they eventually discovered the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Willey, 2 of their daughters, and their farm hands. 3 of the children's bodies were never found.
It's just heartbreaking. So, as they do, news of the tragedy began to spread through newspapers and Theodore Dwight's guidebook, The Northern Traveler. Tourists came to see the house, and artists and writers came as well. Nathaniel Hawthorne, author of The Scarlet Letter and The House of Seven Gables, wrote a story inspired by the house called The Ambitious Guest. A nearby mountain was renamed Mount Willey in honor of the family. Thomas Cole, a member of the Hudson Valley School of Art, painted a landscape entitled Distant View of the Slide that destroyed the Willey family. These days, the site of the tragedy now serves as an interpretive center in Crawford Notch State Park.
So, basically, it's one of those... The thing really is a tragedy, at least in the fantastic sense of the word, in that if they had done nothing, if they had stayed in their home...
Yep.
Not as one of them would have been lost.
Right.
But because of their fear of the rock slide,
shelter.
They sought shelter, and they intercepted the avalanche like right at the point where it rejoined.
Right.
And at that point, there was nobody that was gonna survive.
Right.
And that would be a hard thing too. Like if I had been in the house and I'm hearing like the boulders smash the stable, and I'm sure you could hear like cows mooing or whatever, as they were crushed. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that would be terrifying.
Sure. Absolutely.
And if it was me, I would be tempted to, okay, guys, we're going to get out of here and get to someplace.
Right. And it's the 1800s, so it's not like they have, a minivan to load up their family of what there were 10 of them altogether. The husband, the wife, 5 children, and... so 9 of them. The husband, the wife, 5 children, and then 2 hands.
Yeah.
So it's not like they had, a family Chevy to load up into and get the heck out of Dodge. They were kind of like take shelter or...
Yeah, and the thing is like, okay, for me, the failure comes down to Samuel Willey Jr.
Right.
Because why wouldn't you, even in the 1800s, okay, they had those, I think they're called hurricane lamps with the glass kind of stove on them. Why couldn't you get one of those lit, go out your front door, hold it up, maybe put your hand over a little, keep the rain out of it, but hold your hand up and look around before you go running your family out.
Well, yeah, but I have a feeling he didn't take them to that shelter thinking that the landslide was going to do what it did, Oh,
I'm sure it didn't. I'm just saying, true, they don't have electric light yet, but they have lamps. And a hurricane lamp has a chimney, a glass bulb on it to keep it from going out in rough weather.
Right.
In fact, at the time, they had like mesh screens you could put over them, if I remember correctly.
Well, yeah, but that still would not... I think my feeling on it is that it's kind of hard to, who are we to second guess life on a mountain? I've certainly never lived on a mountain before. I mean, I would assume that after spending almost a year in the area that they probably felt like they were taking the right, safest steps. I mean, I'm sure that he didn't think, oh, let's go out here to get, drowned in a landslide.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree that it was not intentional. I'm just thinking, I see a way out here.
Right.
And I don't know why. Maybe he didn't have one of those lamps, I guess it could be, or...
It's just really impossible.
Or send out one of the hired men. Look, if I've got 2 employees and then you guys, I'm going to send one of the employees.
Well, sure.
Because you guys kind of important to me. Right, Krysta? Right, Krysta?
Yeah.
So, if you guys are kind of important to me, which you are, then why do I want you to go outside without having absolutely as much knowledge as possible?
Fair enough.
And, like I said, heck, a big torch. Break a leg off your table, you can repair it afterwards. Wrap bed sheets or whatever around it.
I mean, but you and I both know, and of course, we weren't in the storm, but we both know I have been in rainstorms here that just, and even our story told us that it was just an incredible storm.
Right.
So even with having a hurricane lamp or a torch or whatever, you're still kind of at the mercy of that weather.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just saying, we're talking about a landslide that is split apart and is going around your house. I think you'd be able to see evidence of that if you had any light whatsoever.
I don't know. How about you, Krysta? Do you have anything?
Not really, no.
See, the other thing, too, is I don't know how this hasn't happened yet again. Because like right now, there are droughts going on now.
Okay, so there are, I think in the historical grand scheme of things, we have learned so much about how to avoid major landslides where people are living. There's netting, and there are land breaks, and there are all kinds of things that we have learned terraforming that they can do in areas where people are living now to make those areas safer. Obviously, they're not going to be 100% safe. We do have landslides and things that happen, especially to people living in mountainous regions or different kinds of areas. However, they have made things a lot safer. We've learned a lot of ways to safeguard, and I think that's probably got a lot to do with it.
And maybe so, but I'm just saying that with the weather being what it has been the past few years, which I think that's global warming, but, it could be... pick a cause you like, because we've had them, we've had droughts. And like here and in California, we would have droughts or low rain summers that would be capped off by a big rainstorm.
Yeah.
And literally, I remember one road in Merced, and Merced was actually normally a fairly calm town, but it was flooded. Now, it wasn't so flooded you couldn't drive through it, but it had water covering the road.
Yeah.
And here,
that happens, unfortunately, fairly often, but they figured out ways to build buildings to make them more substantial and sturdier. And I think that safeguards from a lot of the loss of life that we're talking about in this scenario.
I know. I guess my concern is that I know there's a lot of people who still live on mountains. Like every time I drove through Montana as a comic, I would look up and go, "You people are crazy,"
I agree.
And so I guess I'm just surprised we haven't seen this tragedy more often. And I do want to point out that there is a connection between this and last week's episode about J.H. Mott, the spiritualist. Remember when we talked about that episode, we talked about how there wasn't stuff for people to do, so people went to concerts and whatnot. This place became a tourist destination. Everybody wanted to come and see the place that survived the crash and hear about the family who didn't.
Right.
Like Reverend Willey was actually leading tours through the home at one point. Eventually, so many people were visiting the place that Ethan Crawford bought it and turned it into a 50-room hotel.
Wow.
So, I mean, this is just more proof of, in the 1800s, there just wasn't much to do. I can't imagine going to the kids now, "Hey, kids, a family was wiped out in a landslide, but their house miraculously survived. You want to take a 3-day trek to go see it?"
It seems a bit extreme.
But, I mean, I get it because, otherwise what there was to do was read. And I'm guessing, I mean, I know the Bible was bigger back then than it is now. Like, it was a regular thing for people to read it. But they had other books too, and, some of them are much more fun to read. The Bible is like spiritual soup for the soul. I get it.
Okay.
But
also, I mean, keep in mind in the 1800s, I think books were books were fairly much harder to come by than they are now. Things like that. So, but of course, there weren't as much things for people to do relaxing wise and for enjoyment. But there were also, I mean, day-to-day life took a lot more energy and engagement than it does now. I mean, you didn't throw your clothes in the washer. You had to wash them on a washboard and wring them out in a wringer and hang them on a line and wait for them to dry. And you had to cook food over an open fire and all of those things. So,
right.
Or even the stoves were still, wood stoves, coal stoves, those. So.
No, I'm with you. And we'll cover this a lot more when we talk about the Valeska axe murderer house. But like that place, it was a murder of an entire family, and part of the reason the crime was never solved is the locals kept going to the house and wandering through it. Mm-hmm. Same with Lizzie Borden.
Lizzie Borden's house.
Yeah, the locals would just, ooh. So there was so little to do. People were visiting scenes of murders. Like, I can't imagine, ooh, look, kids, there's his eye.
Well, there are people nowadays that I could totally see doing that. But, the police aren't really all about that these days. They would be like, no, we can't do that. But there are definitely people who would be like, oh, I want to go look at a murder.
Well, it's like there's a movie called Clay Pigeons. Uh-huh. And there's a deputy in it named Barney, which Janine Garofalo's character finds just annoyingly funny. Mm-hmm. And at one point, they're investigating a murder, and she's looking at something because she's like a forensic...
Pathologic?
Yeah. And you hear her say, Barney, quit poking the body with a stick. And I just, you're there, you're looking, hey, Billy, quit poking the body with a stick. Yeah. That's not nice.
Absolutely.
And that's our show. I know it's a little short this week. I apologize. But thanks for listening. Please, if you'd like to discuss this more, or perhaps share an idea for a topic of your own, please join the Family Plot Facebook group.
Absolutely. We love hanging out with our listeners in our Facebook group. We like to share information with everyone. And
every week I will drop a picture that relates to the podcast and ask people their guesses, and we get some pretty funny ones.
Or, pretty close sometimes. Sometimes people guess it first try. Doesn't happen often, though. But
no.
They're pretty good.
No. Well, it's like the episode about... Krysta's favorite episode with Ken Rex McElroy. A lot of people knew who that was, but they were still making silly guesses.
Right.
I'm sorry, Krysta. I was trying to be funny. You don't have to keep looking at me like I'm crazy.
She's all right. She's just, looking for more cat pictures. It's okay.
Also, thanks go out to the fan who suggested this topic. I wish I could remember your Twitter handle at least. Please feel free to reach out after you hear the show and let us know what you think. Thanks to Bill Berendt, and that last name is spelled Behrendt. Bill does our theme music. Bill also has his own podcast, the Rusty and Dusty podcast, and whichever character he isn't might be missing it for a while because he was in a motorcycle accident. So thank you, Bill. Hope your partner gets better soon and returns to the Rusty and Dusty thing. Thanks to Paige Elmore of Reverie True Crime. If you need a true crime podcast, Paige has an amazing one. Highly recommend it. Also, Paige, along with our own Krysta, combined to do our logo art. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Also, thanks to Aaron Gnurk of the Big Dumb Fun Show, who continues to promote us locally. Now, Join us next week as we look into the Japanese holdouts who remained fighting World War II long after the war ended. Like the last one was in the 70s.
Wow.
And not him in his 70s. It was in the 1970s that he made it home.
You know, that's definitely dedication. But
it is.
We'll hopefully find some of that dedication in ourselves next week. So.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.